In this video, we're going to discuss the secret to loving work well into when most people have already retired. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
Let me begin by saying that this video is going to be extremely polarizing for some people. Why is that? Because retirement is the holy grail for a large portion of people that are completely dissatisfied with what they do for work. My guess is the people that were initially drawn to this video, at least a lot of them, can't retire either financially or because they don't have health insurance. It's also important to note that how people feel about retirement is also the inverse of how they feel about work. For example, you've known many people, I know I have anyway, that are well past retirement age but continue to go, and you know that they don't need to work. I have a doctor who's like that. These people tend to be in careers that they're either really good at or emotionally fulfilling or both. You see it in politics, you see it in medicine, you see it in a lot of the charity work that's done post-retirement. We're going to talk about why this is, but before we do, stick around to the end because we're going to talk about what to do if you can't stand working another year. The first thing to note is that retirement is a recent phenomenon here in the United States, in fact, in the world, less than 100 years old. Prior to that time, people retired because they had no choice. The Industrial Revolution effectively made jobs extinct when the older worker couldn't move as fast as the younger worker to get the widgets off the machine. Up until that point, people worked until they couldn't work anymore. Post the Industrial Revolution, people were let go. They didn't plan their retirement, and their lifespan didn't exist much longer in most cases from the time they stepped off the factory floor to the time that, well, you know what I mean. The magic year of 1935 was when Social Security was created, and after that point, retirement at age 65 became a focus point for most people. And in 1965, when Medicare was enacted, the two basic pieces of retirement were complete. You had a little bit of cash flow and you had basic medical care. But here's the thing. People don't want to just disappear into an apartment somewhere in Missouri and live out their retirement years in isolation by themselves and barely get by from day to day. Unfortunately, that's too often the case, but that's not the best way to live out retirement, and most people know this. And of course, financially, this is one of the big reasons people don't retire at age 65, because they don't want to live like that. They want to continue to work and continue to peacefully coexist in the world much longer than age 65, because the alternative is to disappear. The fact is, a very large portion of our retirees, over 50% in fact, have less than $10,000 in retirement savings. That's $10,000 including their pension, by the way. Some of them have help from family and friends, but the fact is 40% of retirees who receive Social Security live on Social Security alone. 40%. If you have no savings, no pension, and Social Security alone as your sole source of income, that's a pretty Spartan retirement. It can be done. In fact, I'll put a link at the end of this video on 7 tips to living on Social Security alone, but it's not a great retirement. And frankly, just from a pure financial perspective, waiting to age 70 means that you get the biggest possible Social Security payment if you're the primary insured. But believe it or not, money is not the biggest reason, or at the very least, the only reason people wait to retire well past age 65. The other is because they have nothing to do. Work provides a large element of human interaction. Maybe not as much today as before COVID because of remote working, but certainly there are plenty of jobs out there that still require you to be in the office or on the factory floor or interacting with other human beings every single day of the week. If you asked 10 retirees what they missed most about working, 5 would say they miss being around other people. And it makes perfect sense. When you're working for the common outcome of the organization that you work for. I'm not sure I could say that again 10 times fast, but the fact is, that is the case. One only need to hear the story about Jack Kennedy when he was touring NASA And he walked up to the janitor and introduced himself. And he said, "What do you do?" The janitor said, "I am here to help put a man on the moon." Kennedy was moved by the janitor's pride, and that comment made it into a lot of his speeches as he progressed through the space program. And it's used today as an example of the mission of the organization and how we all support it. Next is just the fun and laughs of being around work colleagues. The fact is, a lot of people just enjoy the companionship and they have fun at work. They tell jokes, they have the water cooler visits, and as their day progresses, from the time they arrive to the time they leave, they'll often say, "I don't know what happened to the day. It got away from me." This is because they really have fun at their job. Next, work is where a lot of friendships are formed. For those of you that know the actor William Shatner, his most famous role is the captain of the Starship Enterprise on Star Trek, but he also played an attorney on a show called Boston Legal. I sat and watched an interview live with William Shatner a few years ago, and he was talking about James Spader. This was his partner on Boston Legal. And he said at the conclusion of the series finale, he and James agreed to stay in touch. And he knew at that point in time, even though they both meant it, given the nature of acting, you say, "Let's keep in touch. I'll call you next Tuesday," and next Tuesday never happens. And I believe what he said, and there was a bit of noise, but I believe what he said was he hasn't talked to James Spader since he left the set. He's seen him a few times and waved, but not actually had a face-to-face discussion, even though this was, and he still admits, still is one of his closest friends in the acting world. For a lot of people that you know who've left the job, when they leave, the friendship leaves too, even though there's no intent for that to happen. It just does. Next is companionship. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have friends or family outside of their work. Their work is where they have all human interaction. And if you remove them from their job, you're removing them from human interaction. This is particularly true, by the way, for someone who has lost their spouse, and unfortunately the statistics are high on this point, particularly into retirement. So people who have nothing to go home to would prefer not to go home. Work also provides an element of support because bad things happen. Just as an example, in the last 6 months, I've known 6 different people who've passed away, 2 relatives and 4 friends. Now, this is an unusually high number for anyone, but if you are someone that doesn't have any other type of support, being in a structured work environment is a very good place to be when bad things are happening around you. Next is the emotional side of working. Staying in the game means that you stay sharp and you feel like you're moving forward, even if all that means is you're not moving backward. Now, what does backward mean? Well, when you leave your work, there are things that you leave behind that you wish you could take with you. Conversely, there are also things that you receive when you move into retirement that you're glad you have. So it is a double-edged sword. But on the emotional side, you're connected to a higher purpose than just what are you going to do today and how are you going to plan your next vacation or next birthday party. Now, you say, "Jeff, I am done. I cannot stand to work another day." I get it, but I can't go back to the office. This is my last year. Well, let's talk about what that actually means, because it doesn't mean that you're done working. It could mean that you're just done working where you work now. If you can't stand another year at your current employer, but you want to continue to work, then just find a new employer. Now you say, "Jeff, that's easier said than done." But if you're faced with the choice of having no income and going into retirement, or taking an easier job that might pay less, maybe the better job is the way to go. And frankly, not every job pays less. I have a cousin who works and supports her local community down in Florida. And I was speaking with her over Thanksgiving, and she absolutely loves what she does. And she's 70 years old. She didn't always work there, but wanted to continue working after her previous high-stress role. And she was offered this opportunity, and making the choice between leaving the workforce or taking the opportunity, she chose the opportunity. She had divorced a few decades earlier, and my guess is continuing to work kept her young. She doesn't look 70, by the way, not even close. So there's probably a lot of truth to this. And in her case, I'm sure it wasn't a money thing, but she didn't take Social Security until age 70, and that is the largest possible payout. So it's a win-win. And she has a new husband, so call that a win-win-win. If you like this video, check out that video on 10 really fun retirement side hustles. Also, as promised, check out that video on 7 tips to retiring on Social Security alone. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.